Welcome to this explainer. Let me ask you a question right off the bat. Are you feeling completely burnt out by modern information overload? You know, the constant notifications, the endless streams of data, the lingering anxiety that the world is just moving entirely too fast? Well, you are definitely not alone. And today, I've got a surprisingly practical solution for you. Now, it comes from a very ancient source, but we're going to look at it strictly through the lens of modern systems theory.
Okay, let's dive right into this. When you hear the word Tao or the name Laozi, you probably immediately picture ancient mysticism, flowing robes, maybe some vague philosophical poetry, right? Well, today we are stripping all of that mystical magic away. We need to completely reframe Laozi. Think of him not as a mystic, but actually as a brilliant, high-dimensional observer of a society that was actively collapsing all around him.
So, what is the Tao, really? If we look closely at the source material, it becomes incredibly clear that the Tao is absolutely not a religion. It's an objective rule set. Think of it as the universe's underlying non-human operating protocol. It's literally the ultimate survival protocol designed for navigating a highly volatile system. And the crazy thing is, this protocol remains completely stable, regardless of our human will, our petty desires, or whatever societal chaos might be swirling around us, much like the extreme chaos Lao Tzu himself lived through during the spring and autumn period. Today, we're deconstructing this ancient philosophy through a strict 5-part systems theory framework. We'll be looking at the universe's operating protocol, nonlinear stimulus and feedback, anti-entropy and risk isolation, lowering consciousness noise, and finally, syncing with the rules. By the end of this, you'll see this isn't magic. It is pure structural engineering. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the universe's operating protocol. To truly grasp why this protocol is so incredibly powerful, we have to look at the incredibly hostile environment Lao Tzu was trying to survive. During the ancient Zhou dynasty, society was experiencing a total sheer collapse. Endless war, completely shattered order. Sound familiar? Today, we're dealing with our own form of systemic fragility, AI data overload, and an incredibly fast-paced, highly coupled digital world. It's wild, but that ancient chaos directly parallels our modern age, and it's causing the exact same widespread mental attrition. Right in the middle of all his era's chaos, Lao Tzu famously wrote, "Heaven and earth are ruthless, and treat all things as straw dogs." Now, people often misinterpret this as a really dark, pessimistic view of a cruel universe, but actually, it's incredibly freeing. This quote is all about an objective, non-human order. It simply means the universe runs on a set of rules that absolutely do not care about human politics, our emotional desires, or who happens to be winning a war today. The system operates entirely on its own terms. Which brings us to Section 2, nonlinear stimulus and feedback. Now, what's really interesting here is the actual mechanism of how things work. In traditional linear thinking, we assume that applying a strong intervention leads directly to a solved problem. Boom, problem fixed. But Lao Tzu observed that complex systems just don't work like that. When rulers forcefully intervene with strong stimuli, like really heavy-handed policies, the system doesn't improve linearly. Instead, it triggers non-linear feedback. The over-intervention drastically amplifies the chaos, and the whole system ends up crashing faster. And that brings us to a famous term you've probably heard thrown around, wu wei. It usually gets translated as doing nothing, which, let's be honest, sounds pretty terrible for productivity, right? Let's translate this jargon directly into tech terms. Wu wei is absolutely not doing nothing. It is the active reduction of artificial, desire-driven over-intervention. It's realizing your system is totally overloaded and taking your hands off the keyboard so the complex system can finally reboot and restore its own natural order. Moving right along to Section 3, anti-entropy and risk isolation. Now that we understand how the underlying mechanism works, we really need to focus on stability. Lao Tzu proposed a strategy called small state, few people. For centuries, critics have completely dismissed this as a naive plea to go back to the primitive dark ages. But from a modern systems science perspective, it is a brilliant anti-entropy strategy. As a civilization scales up, its energy friction, its information pressure, and its internal complexity grow exponentially, which makes it incredibly fragile. So this is an active strategy to deliberately lower the system's scale to reduce that immense vulnerability. The source material actually provides a fantastic analogy for this structure. Think of a massive, modern ocean liner. To keep it safe, you don't just build one giant hollow hull. No way. You divide that massive structure into independent, watertight compartments. That way, if a local failure or leak occurs, the water is contained to just one unit. The overall integrity of the ship remains completely stable.
Lao-Tzu was applying this exact same risk isolation engineering straight to human society.
All right, let's jump into Section 4, lowering consciousness noise.
So, with all that said, how do we actually process the unbelievable amount of data the universe throws at us every single day? Well, Lao-Tzu advised to attain ultimate emptiness, hold true stillness. If we narrate over this ancient wisdom using modern cognitive science language, what Lao-Tzu is actually proposing here is a rigorous, highly focused internal observation experiment.
You see, our human senses are inherently limited. We're only perceiving a tiny, tiny fraction of reality. If we are constantly bombarded with high-intensity external stimuli, like the endless scrolling, the pings, the notifications, we literally cannot perceive anything deeper. To capture the universe's underlying frequencies and rules, we have to actively lower those external stimuli. Lowering your internal consciousness noise is quite literally the only way to sync up with the deeper rules connecting energy and matter.
And finally, we arrive at Section 5, syncing with the rules. It is time to pull all these ancient theories directly into your lap. We are currently living in a reality of high-speed information coupling that is literally pushing our nervous systems to the absolute breaking point. We are redlining our brains every single day. Lao-Tzu's solution? Ground ourselves in basic, healthy energy structures like mindful breathing, eating well, and simple physical labor. This isn't just a fun weekend wellness trend. It is a vital, necessary survival tactic to protect our biological systems from screen-induced burnout. To really grasp this, we have to understand the profound difference between static language and a dynamic, nonlinear system. Words, concepts, and rigid definitions, those are just a finger pointing at the moon. The actual flowing truth, the universe's rules, well, that's the moon itself, the actual light source.
And this perfectly explains the famous opening line of his text. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. Lao-Tzu wasn't being purposely confusing or trying to sound deeply mysterious here. He was stating a hard scientific fact. A constantly evolving, multidimensional, nonlinear system simply cannot be trapped in static language. The very second you define it rigidly with words, you freeze it, and it's no longer the dynamic system.
And here is the ultimate mic drop summary of this entire explainer. The universe runs on rules, not on human desires. True wisdom is not fighting the system. Real wisdom is giving up your exhausting, ego-driven fight to control this immensely complex system, and instead choosing to align yourself perfectly with its underlying operating protocol. Which leaves us with this final thought for you to chew on. Take a really hard look at your own hyperconnected life. Where are you forcefully over-intervening right now? How can you stop fighting the system and return to the underlying rules to cure your own modern mental attrition? Think about your daily habits. The protocol is out there, running perfectly, just waiting for you to sync up with it.